Well, I think the first thing to say is that Africa was not hit as hard as the rest of the world by the pandemic, but was hit harder by the economic recession caused by the pandemic. And this forced businesses to find new resiliency to weather the economic storm, which was worse than the health storm. And overall, you can sort of divide African businesses into three categories. There was the category that thrived because of the pandemic. There were the categories that struggled and were disrupted and had to make adjustments, and then there was a category for which it was catastrophic, and whole sectors of certain economies that went down as a result. I think the simplest way to say what happened is everything digital got better, what they call fintech and edtech and health tech. So there were whole areas that grew, and we're seeing a rapid digitization and financialization in the tech space in Africa, which has been accelerated by the pandemic. So a lot of changes.
And so you mentioned obviously one of the sectors that did well. What about the ones that have struggled the most?
Well, certainly anything that's primary resource related, oil, gas, metals, minerals, despite continuing economic growth around the world and in certain manufacturing areas, Africa was hit hard. The price of oil dropped by 50%. Manufacturing in many areas dropped by about 40%. Tourism took a big hit. So there were whole sectors of economies that really suffered, retail. And, about 80 to 90% of Africans, depending on where you look, work in the informal sector. The informal sector was hit hard. So there was really a lot of stress around the continent. And I think continent-wide, about a 3.3% drop in GDP and probably effects in certain countries that go 3-4 years out. Some countries will recover quite quickly, right. Others will take time.
Now, one thing we have seen is a lot of pivoting and innovation during this time. So how have startups and entrepreneurs reacted or pivoted during this time, and what sectors are you keeping an eye on? Well,
certainly there was a lot of acquisitions that went on and consolidation. So, for example, while tourism suffered, tourism mergers and acquisitions boomed, and there were consolidations and new, let's say, positive multiplier effects in that industry, which will bode well for the longer term. Certainly, anything to do with finance, anything to do with digital services, as I said, in the health sector and the education sector, took a real jump. And it's very clear that those that were nimble, those that reacted in a way that could produce the services and manufacturing that the continent was looking for did well. So, for example, you had businesses that started manufacturing masks, businesses that started providing educational services, businesses that created new ways to deliver things across the continent, even by drones. Anything where there was disruptive innovation like this not only did well, but planted seeds for the longer term future.
Now, something that's interesting, a lot of people might not know, but women have been such an important factor in business growth in Africa. Tell us more about that.
Well, until through 2019 and even into the first quarter of 2020, things were looking very good for women. Women-run businesses tend to grow faster, tend to be better run, tend to outperform investor expectations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But women were hit particularly hard by the pandemic for a lot of reasons, including all of the sort of reorganization of society that had to happen, particularly in the second quarter, that sort of set women backwards. And then as things began to pick up in September, the third quarter, particularly in September, women were right there on the forefront. And there are individual cases all over the continent where women took the lead on, as I was saying, providing services, digital services, online functions. So as traditional employment, which often go to men, so let's say in mining, diamond mining, oil production, women were in this informal sector space that began to grow again. And things are looking very good for 2021 for women, particularly even in high growth tech, the areas you know, the startups that earn hundreds of millions of dollars that are getting a lot of investment from
Right.
the outside, including by Jeff Bezos's group. A lot of these are women-run businesses, and things are looking quite good for them in 2021.